sounds good. And I can do my customary clapjack. Oh, I love it. Okay, here we go. So, welcome to a Provenate podcast. I'm delighted to be joined by a few guests. So we'll do introductions. If I can start on my left in the studio.
Jenny Carlson, Ardnamurchan Distillery, Marketing Communication Manager.
Great stuff, Jenny. Thanks for coming.
Scott Stewart, the Production Manager, Ardnamurchan Distillery.
Fantastic. And then joining us online all the way from Argentina, where the sun will be shining brightly, I'm sure.
Actually, it's not. It's raining as it probably should be down there. Gonzalo Escanrani, CTO, software developer, and on the tech side here.
Perfect. So the reason we brought everyone together today is because as a team, we've been working with Ardnamurchan and producing some software that we hope is going to have and is having a positive impact in two specific areas of the business. But before we even go there, I guess it would be good just for the audience to hear about Ardnamurchan and what's Ardnamurchan all about? What are the values? What's the whiskey taste like? Tell everyone, Jenny.
This is my day job. Great. Ardnamurchan Distillery is quite a new. It's one of the newer distilleries out in Scotland. In fact, we are probably the older ones in the new generation. We will be 10 years old next year. We started distilling in 2014. The distillery is on the most westerly point of mainland Britain. It's sort of nestled in between the Isle of Mull and Isle of Skye, I would say.
I was fortunate to go there, and it is absolutely beautiful.
It is beautiful. I mean, it's worth that journey, the one single lane, windy road with meeting places. It is quite it's quite a journey to make together, that's for sure, but it's worth it, definitely. It's surrounded by volcanic rocks and really ancient flora and fauna. So it's a nice, beautiful part of Scotland. And I believe, we are the first legal distillery there we don't think there's been any distilling legally done there before. Wow. So quite exciting. But we just started distilling in 2014 and we are classed as quite a green distillery. We all our processes are with the responsibility towards the land and the people that in the area where we're in.
Amazing.
So we tend to use renewable energy. We've got a biomass boiler to heat up our stills. We have a hydro set up in the river. We've also recently installed 138 solar panels.
Wow.
So we are pretty self-sufficient in terms of energy and heat and all that, which is the big requirement when you make whiskey.
Is that kind of unusual in the distillery space? Is it becoming more common? I mean, what's because you guys were definitely one of the first to go to that space, right?
We kind of the distilleries around Scotland. There are hundreds of there's 150 now. I think there may even be more. Don't quote me on that. But most of them are between 150 and 200 year old. But there are some new distilleries on the scene, and all the new distilleries have adapted sustainability as their core,
which is a good thing. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. The Scotch Whisky Association have set a target for the industry to be. Now we have to be careful with the term we're using. Is it net zero or is it carbon neutral? You've got all these buzzwords buzzing about, but it's to be as green as it possibly can by 2040. There are some targets for all distilleries to meet, which is hard if you have a distillery from 1828.
Absolutely.
How do you change your ways? But we are lucky in that aspect that the distillery uses renewable energy in terms of heating up and making the whiskey, but all the way through the process, we are looking at the most sustainable way of delivering. So the packaging, we actually reduced packaging completely and we've stopped using a box. We've just sell our whiskey in a bottle. And we...
Quicker to get into as well,
Oh,
right?
absolutely, yeah. I mean, we're very... It's true. It's quite a natural way of producing it, of presenting it.
Yep.
And our bottle it's more or less naked. It's a clear glass bottle, really high recycled content, made in England. We try and keep our suppliers as local as we can as well. But the label is quite small because we want the whiskey to do all the talking. But on the back label, we have a QR code that links to the story behind that whiskey and the distillery. And that is our secret weapon. That means we can communicate directly to the consumers, and I think we're talking more about that.
We will absolutely be diving into that. I think Gonzalo and I know a bit about that.
Yeah.
That's great. And just finally then, the whiskey itself.
Oh yes.
So give us a flavour, no pun intended, but of the product itself.
I mean, the distillery is one of the newer ones, but we are traditional in the way we make our whiskey. The recipe is traditional. We are right on the west coast of Scotland. So the idea behind the distillery, or the flavours of our whiskey, was always that it was going to be coastal and really show off the area. So we are that. Think walk on the beach, kind of getting the sea hitting your lips, and you're getting that saltiness. So quite mineralic. There is some initial fruit when you go into it, but it's very waxy and rich and coastal, I would say.
Very nice, very nice.
A hint of peat in there as well, because we're kind of a tiny little bit of peat in there as well.
I love it. And the irony of all this for the audience, by the way, I'm sat here listening to this description of gorgeous whiskey, and the irony is about 3.5 years ago I stopped drinking altogether. Oh. So what a sad day.
But you can nose whiskey. You have nosed our whiskey. I know you have. So you can do that.
I have, and it smells
part of the experience.
Lovely.
Gonzalo tasted it for you.
And Gonzalo tasted it for me. Yeah, I think he made up for it actually. So we'll come on to Gonzalo in a second. So if we think about the folk who are actually responsible for producing that stuff, I'm looking over to my left. I'm seeing the handsome Scott. Tell us about your role, and tell us about, and we're not going to embarrass you about talking about BBC Click documentaries or anyone wanting Scott's signature and autograph. I'd get in sooner rather than later,
I'd be happy
right?
just to get back up to Ardnamurchan and to complete anonymity again. That'd be quite nice, and just get on with producing spirit.
So talk to us about that. Talk to us about the production of the whiskey and how you do it at Ardnamurchan and what the challenges are, and everything.
So I'm responsible for production, which means that from when the malted barley arrives at the distillery to when we decant into cask in the warehouse. So we've got 4 guys, including myself, that work in production. We've got 3 guys over in the warehouse who cover holidays, so everybody's able to participate in the production side of things.
Yep.
So we do half the year unpeated, half the year peated, or at least that's the way it used to be.
And is it divided literally into half years, or
yeah, pretty much.
Okay,
50,
but things are now starting to kind of move on a little bit. So things are starting to get a wee bit more interesting. So we're going to go back after this shutdown, and we're going to do a heritage run, with heritage malt, different yeasts. So we're starting to experiment a wee bit more with that sort of side of things.
Yeah.
We introduced heavily peated. Was it a couple of years ago? It was 80 parts per million instead of 30 parts per million.
Wow.
So the production side of things, 4 of us basically are in there running it. It's very manual, so that you're not going to find someone there controlling all the valves behind the desk. Everyone's up and down the stairs. Your 10,000 steps a day, no problem. No problem.
And how big's the operation?
So we have a capacity to reach about 400,000 litres of alcohol per year. That would be running a 60-week 2 mashes per day on a double shift.
Yep.
At the moment, we're running 5 days. So I think we've probably reached about 360,000 litres of alcohol this year, which is still a fair chunk. I think we're up to about 15,000 casks at the moment on site, which is just over 2 million litres of alcohol.
Goodness me. That's a lot of alcohol.
It's a lot of alcohol, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking the challenges with our distillery are obviously location. As much as it's the beauty, it's the location.
Well, location, we also have a biomass boiler, and the reasons behind that is quite clear. It's for sustainability.
Yeah.
It's to have the wood chip sourced locally. But that comes with its challenges. A biomass boiler is not going in the morning, flicking on a switch, a kerosene or a gas boiler, and boom, you've got heat.
So there's a price to pay, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the thing is that we've had the boiler for so long now that I don't think there's anything that could go wrong with it anymore that we haven't already seen. And because of our location, we can't exactly just pick up the phone and have a boiler engineer arrive within an hour. So the guys have become really familiar with the boiler and how to fix it quickly. So
key part of the operation, right?
Yeah, so we can back up and running. but it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth it to go through that to have the biomass boiler. And I think probably at the very start when they had the biomass boiler, they were having more problems than we have with it now. And it's because we've ironed out all these bugs over the last 7, 8, 9 years.
Yeah.
And we've got to the point where we're like, all right, okay, we know what that is. Bang, go in, fix it, swap the part out, and away we go.
Amazing. Okay, and so I think now's a good time to bring in Gonzalo. So, and I know Gonzalo's also had the pleasure of visiting the distillery and meeting the two of you. So, Gonzalo, we've got a use case here where there's a pretty complex production process going on, making an amazing product. Talk to us about how that fits in, and obviously how that fits in with your process and how we've been able to help so far.
Great. So when I was first introduced this tech whiskey topic at first, I was amazed on how many opportunities the whiskey industry have in terms of technology. So I've never seen like such a good example of storing data that will be valuable many years ago as in the whiskey industry, because as the product matures and we are selling whiskey 5, 10, 15 years after it was produced, that data also remains valuable when you're storing it properly and when we are recording every aspect of the process for anyone that is interested in that information many years after that happened. So that was mainly the challenge that we had in Ardnamurchan, and the software that we'll be building to record all the production process and store it and show it to the consumer on this QR code that we're adding in the labels of the whiskey, and being able to provide them with all the information end to end on how that whiskey was produced, and also storing into the blockchain, which we believe is very important for transparency and being publicly open in terms of the data that we are storing, and the fact to check that we are authentic on the process that we're building. So I think that was mainly the challenge and what we achieved, which is, I think it's an amazing example on how a company or any business can be transparent to the consumer, transparent to any authority or any entity that wants to validate the process, and yeah, basically that.
That's a really interesting point, because I think when we were having discussions in the distillery space and actually in production of goods space, so FMCG more generally, blockchain either resonates or it doesn't. So people can immediately see the value of a kind of a distributed ledger storage system of data, or they think it's a fancy tech term that's linked to crypto and run a mile.
Yeah.
And clearly, with the sustainability links, people also pull the fact that blockchain in the crypto space with the mining is inherently energy. It uses a lot of energy, right? But even that's changing dramatically. And I think, Gonzalo, if you could just give us a flavour of considerations we had around blockchain and making that as sustainable as possible. And I think, again, we're on a journey ourselves to ensuring the long-term sustainability of the blockchain in the product, right?
Yes, absolutely. So in terms of the decision, we use Polygon, which is a wider known blockchain solution or blockchain network in terms of storing the data, but it's one of the greener ones in the market right now. So basically the idea was to store it in one that it's well known, but also to be conscious about the amount of energy that blockchain is using right now to validate each of the blocks that are building in the network. So yes, we definitely had that as part of the solution and consider it in what we built, because in the core values of Ardnamurchan, we're all aware about the sustainability and what we want to achieve with the carbon neutral. So that was definitely part of the equation when we decided, and also the many challenges that we have right now in terms of tracking everything and help Ardnamurchan in order to show, prove, and make improvements on how they are doing on the carbon footprint.
I think that's one really important thing to say, is that our software is built to integrate with external systems. So when we look at things like energy or ESG targets, we can pull that data in and look at it in a single pane of glass. And I think that's the trajectory for a lot of different organizations now, is to pull these kind of disparate data sets in and then see what the impact of all of those is on different areas of the business.
So I was going to say, because distilleries don't just make whiskey. We are a distillery, but we're a shipper, and we take orders. We have, so the fact that this system can link into like customer relations programs, to Xero for our accounts, even if you're using another system for maturing your stock, having the link to that, there's other systems available for that, obviously, that's really attractive. Because what Gonzalo touched on earlier, making whiskey takes years, decades. And a lot of this stuff is stored in, older distilleries will have stored in Excel sheets.
Absolutely.
Or on an old system called drams. They'll be mad at me for calling it old. I'm sure it's not that old anymore. I'm sure they update it, but it's just one of these, it's multifaceted. It's not just, we're not just making whiskey. There's everything. There's ingredients come in, suppliers, and the way that we can link it throughout the process and make it as transparent as possible.
Ultimately, you've got to be a viable business as well, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So can we come over to the production side then and talk about what the software has done so far in terms of changing the role, perhaps changing the view, not just from yourself as kind of lead guy in there, but for the team as well, because one of the things that's clear to us is whenever you go into an industry or a sector, there's a kind of there's an aversion to adoption and moving forward, because if you've always done things the way you've done them for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, it's very difficult when somebody comes along and says, I think we could probably do that better. There's resistance, right? There's resistance to change. So can we talk about the good stuff and the bad stuff? Like, just what are the challenges, but also what are the real benefits so far?
We're quite lucky. The guys at the distillery are not adverse to trying something new. But what we did from the start is everything's always been done in paper from the day dot in the distillery. It used to be big books, big ledgers, and then they get taken away and replaced with smaller sheets of paper. So because we've been using those sheets of paper, it was just a case of making the production tool look identical or as close to as possible the sheets of paper that were all getting used. So there's nothing new in there that you're entering. It's just the way to do it. And then having the tablets with the production tool on it side by side with the paper, and doing both for maybe a month or two.
Yeah, just to make everyone feel comfortable.
Just to get everybody comfortable with it, to the point where, all of a sudden the paper's been left in the desk and the tablet's now been taken rather than vice versa.
Amazing,
rather than sort of taking the paper, doing the numbers on the mash, coming back and putting the tablet. Now it's the opposite way around. So it's actually seeing that as kind of going, okay, right, everybody's kind of quite happy to adapt to this and adopt it.
Yeah. And you've also requested fairly recently some kind of standardized reporting that I understand was, pretty laborious in the way it's been done to date, and that you've seen some efficiencies there?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things we have to produce every period or every week is a statement of produce, something that's required for each MRC. So at the moment, or the way it would have been done before, is to collect, say, 12 different mash sheets, 12 different wash still periods, wash stills, 12 different spirit stills, the faints that get done at the end of the period, maybe 3 spirit reductions, cask fillings, the whole lot, all these bits of paper together and sit and just put it on a spreadsheet. Whereas if all the guys are inputting this data anyway into the iPad or into the tablet, as they're doing it, it's literally just, I want to pull that report, and then it sends an email with the Excel and it's got all the information there.
Wow.
And it takes 2-3 minutes rather than sort of maybe half a day.
That's a big gear shift, isn't it?
Yeah. And when we first started doing it, I was doing side by side, old style, new style, and going and then printing both of them off and sitting there.
Do they match?
Do they match? Do they match? Okay, they do match. Okay, I'll put that to one side, put that to the other.
So, do you think that experience has kind of opened your eyes a bit in terms of the potential upsides moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're recording data for, say, how successful your fermentations are, how your final gravity is going,
yeah,
then rather than me putting that into a spreadsheet, creating a chart to match us with, say, last year, how we doing with our fermentations in the summer, which we always struggle with, this year compared with last year, instead of me sitting with a spreadsheet going through all of 2022, what we've done in 2023, being able to just pull that data automatically, click a few buttons. So I want to see the final gravity for last year, I want to see the final gravity for this year so far, and comparing the two of them.
Wow.
And then say, okay, we've done this right, we've done that wrong. What can we alter? And seeing it in real time as well.
Yeah.
You know, you'd maybe get the time to do that maybe once every quarter when we're shut down. Now I can sort of look at it almost every week or even every day if I wanted to, if I was that sad. I'll never do that.
He does.
I do that, yeah. I do that.
But there are significant upsides then in terms of having the data to call upon. It's just what you choose to call upon and how you kind of aggregate it, I think, is the power, right?
Yeah, and as I said before, there's only 4 of us in production, including me. So there's not exactly a lot of time.
Huge team.
There's not a lot of time for me to sit in my office for a full day and go over this stuff. So being able to drag it down very quickly and analyse it very quickly.
Do you think that so I was really surprised about the kind of adversity to adoption.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that unusual, do you think? Or are you just lucky to have a team that is actually, you know, actually, yeah, we can see the benefits. Let's go with it. As long as it's accurate, as long as it's workable, as long as it's easy, let's use it, right?
Well, I think I've spoken about this before, but the guys we've got in production, they didn't come from the whiskey industry. They came from all different industries. So
do you think that's the key then?
I think it's probably got something to do with it.
Huh.
You know, we've got a master builder. We've got somebody that was in IT. We've got somebody that was front of house. Yeah, no. Yeah, no. IT-ish. So I think because they don't come in, the other guys have not come in with any sort of prejudice to change. That's helped us a lot, I think.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily to say that somebody that's been in the whiskey industry and has been a mashman or stillman for 20 years isn't going to be able to adapt and adopt and is going to be prejudiced about something new coming in.
Yeah.
But I think it has benefited us.
But the team has been aware as well. We've been working on this for 3 years.
Yeah.
And they've seen the sometimes struggle that we've had with getting it right with companies that we worked with in the past. And I think they were quite... they needed to see it. Like as soon as you brought out the tablets, and having worked with Provenit, as soon as you brought out the tablets and showed them how it works now, they were won over, and your confidence in the product as well helps.
Aye, and also involving them as well.
Yeah.
Not just saying, right, here's what we've created, there you go, work with it.
No, they help develop it as well.
It's been a case of, here we've created this, have a wee look over it, have a play about with it. Tell me if there's anything you're not happy with.
That's about bringing the team on the journey.
Yeah.
Everyone says that, but it's so vital to do that.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's something on that production tool. I don't think there's anyone in there that's not contributed some feedback to the production tool, which is now an actual fact.
Yeah.
And that's so important.
And coming over to Gonzalo again, because I keep forgetting he's in the room virtually with us. But is it fair to say, Gonzalo, that the biggest challenge for us wasn't the development and the coding and the production of the software? It was actually understanding the process. Was that the biggest challenge, or would you disagree with that?
Absolutely. I think that in terms of tech, we did the first baby steps to build a software to start tracking the data, which was one of the main things that we needed to do in order to then enable many other things, which are like they are on the tech aspect, and also on the industry, on the whiskey, on the business aspect. Now that we have the data stored correctly, and we only added the blockchain piece, which will be the disruptive technology tool that we have right now in terms of blockchain. But yes, definitely the main challenge for us was understanding the process and making a tool that will be usable for the people that are recording this every day, because we are the people behind building the tool but not using it, and understanding the user is always one of the main things that we need to do when we're building software. So I think that the challenge was to understand the process and to build a tool that will work for the daily usage there in the distillery. I think that we achieved that, and now we are looking for a roadmap that I think it's very, very interesting in terms of tech, and also in terms of what other things the business will require of the data we're storing in order to accomplish the goals.
Yeah, and so we're looking at a roadmap, and we're heading at speed at this. So for transparency, we've got production up and running, we've got marketing up and running, which I really want to talk to Jenny about in a second, and then we've got that blockchain capability, which is an optional module in the software. But the other conversations we're having are around inventory, it's around sampling, it's around sustainability and different data sets. We're having conversations with distilleries around capturing data from SCADA systems. So there's a whole raft of conversations that are going on that are driving that roadmap with some considerable speed and aggression, I would say, Gonzalo. So it's incredibly exciting, I think, for us. And what keeps us going, what keeps us passionate, is the feedback that we get and the impact that we can see. So on the marketing side, clearly we've worked with you really hard to tell the story of Ardnamurchan and the product, and that's multifaceted through the product, right? And talk to us a bit about that, and then maybe the journey or the direction of travel there in terms of statistics and understanding. I mean, I know we're right at the beginning of that journey for Ardnamurchan, but I think you can see kind of the direction of travel. So where does that start for you today? And what is the consumer able to kind of interrogate and see today versus what you imagine might be possible in the future?
So the Provenant tool that the production guys are using is amazing in many ways for them, but also from a marketing perspective, what they do is the data points they enter, I can pull out and stick in a website that is then behind that QR code on the bottle.
Nice.
So a customer that buys a bottle of Ardnamurchan scans the code, and then they get a little bit of information about that bottle. So what number bottle it is, and the story about the distillery, but also those the information that we have in the blockchain about who actually who bottled it, or who mashed it, and who was in the distillery.
So that level of detail for the consumer.
We can choose how much we want to give them. Obviously, the production tool is super detailed, and consumers these days, especially whiskey geeks, wants to know a lot about their whiskey. Yeah. But we have to be careful, because the more we give them, the more they want to know. There's a bit of a balance. We are actually, as a company, all whiskey geeks anyway. So we know what they want to know. We look at it a bit like a tour of the distillery and a tour of that whiskey that they're drinking. So they can scan and they can find out the whole process of how the whiskey was made. I can then, on another website, check the scanning of the QR code, on market specific. Yep. So I can tell if we've had sales staff in Japan, for example. I can tell that the code scanning increases in that market. And that's interesting. I mean, there's so much more I can find out on the back of that code if I had time. Again, there's one person in marketing communication, and it's me. I don't have all the time in the world, but ideally I'd like to analyse these figures and find out a bit more without probing too much, because we don't need to know what shoe size they are. We don't need that information. Just
because you can, it doesn't mean
exactly.
You should,
right? Why would we? I mean, people are cautious with what they put in. And the thing is, you don't need to sign up for anything. You just scan the code, and we know that you're in a certain country. Yep. So from a marketing and from a understanding who your consumer are, that's an invaluable tool, I think. Do you think that's our secret weapon? That's a secret. Okay. Yeah.
Do you think that consumers generally, and so there's an element, and what's made me curious is, you've got the whiskey geeks who really want to get into the detail of each product and each release. But then you've got this kind of macro stuff going on, where I see kind of consumers generally around the world becoming much more savvy about wanting to know the detail, not just about the product, but who are this organisation? What do they believe in? Is it greenwashing? Trust, all of that sort of stuff. So there's a savvy kind of macro consumer direction.
Yeah, there is.
But then you've got the particular product interest as well, right? And so balancing that out, as you say, is maybe a bit tricky or not.
It can be tricky. I mean, we decide. In the end of the day, we can decide what we share on that tool or on the platform, and we are still doing that. But if we have requests, if one of the sales teams guys are out doing tastings and somebody says, could you add this to, we call it the storybook.
Okay.
What comes up when you scan the code? could you add this to the storybook? In fact, somebody asked, could you have an audio of how you pronounce the distillery? Because in Sweden, they don't pronounce it the same way as we do. So it was quite interesting. So we did that. We added that. Obviously, that's nothing to do with the blockchain technology or anything, but it's a way of communicating with them and listening to them.
You can serve that to consumers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So and just to get it right then, so you're able to produce digital products from your desk.
Yeah.
You can then pick out the relevant bits of data from the production of that product, and you decide at the click of a button what story is being told around that product, and that's the story that a consumer will see when they scan that code.
Exactly.
So you can change that dynamically on the go.
Yeah, I mean, we have a bit of static information on there, obviously.
Of course.
But there is, currently, because our whiskey is being released at 5 and 6 years old, I'm using old spreadsheets. Well, I'm using a spreadsheet for the information. Yeah. But in the future, with the production guys now using the production tool, that information will be taken straight.
Perfect.
And that takes away that job for me. So that's great. I think that has been, and this year, I mean, again, this is nothing to do with the blockchain side of things, but the fact that we've managed to translate that storybook into 6 languages has been probably the best news for our importers across the world. And really celebrated by them, and especially in Italy and France and China and Germany, even they were delighted, even though they speak fluent English better than us, but they just like having their own language.
So again, consumer scans the code within the territory and they get presented with, how does it work?
Well, we went for the simple solution because just people are living across borders these days.
Of course,
So we decided to go for a simple solution where you just click on the languages. So it comes up in English, and then in the right-hand corner in the storybook, you can choose what language you want to translate it in, and it happens instantly. Brilliant. And again, that was actually our importers that helped us with the translation, because they know our products the best. So the German importer wrote the German piece.
Nice.
The person in Taiwan wrote that piece, and so
real team effort.
A real team effort.
Yeah.
It gave them a bit of ownership of it as well. But I mean, we're a small company in terms of we're not a massive big distillery. We have a great relationship with our suppliers and our customers, and we can ask these things, and we can be flexible, and you know, it's quite a unique position to be in.
The relationships are strong, I think. Yeah. So Gonzalo, what's the future for that marketing piece as you see it? What's the potential and the opportunities on the data side?
So I think the future is very exciting and also very challenging for us. I think that now that we are storing data every day on the distilleries, we are starting to gain value on it, and now that AI is a trend and it's in the mouth of everyone over the world, there's a lot of opportunities over there in terms of analyzing the data, in terms of producing reports for the production managers to analyze patterns that maybe they didn't realize yet, and also in terms of speaking about generative AI, to produce different ideas for blenders when you have such, for example, I have these kind of batches and I want to produce like this kind of taste of whiskey. Let's see what the AI says in terms of analyzing my data and see if there are new ideas that will come in the future that will be very, very interesting and will definitely improve the whiskey business and the whiskey industry and the experience of every consumer in the world.
There's 2 schools of thought here, and I've got to put the first on the table for all the techophobes, is that the production of great whiskey is a dark art, right? And I didn't know that, but I've been told that several times. So there's kind of 2 schools here, and it'd be interesting to see which one emerges over time. So you've got the school of dark arts, and nobody knows how these amazing things are produced. And then you've got what you talked about, I think, is this reverse engineering where you're looking at location of a cask in a bonded warehouse. You're looking at the type of cask and the history of the cask itself. Then you're looking around kind of maturation of the spirit and the change in palate and taste over time. And then you start to link all of these things together. So you can see where it's been stored, you can see which location it's at, you can see how many times it's re-racked, you can see where the barrel comes from, you can see the blend, you can see the sampling data. And in the event that you get an amazing product in that instance, you should from a tech perspective, be able to reverse engineer all of that back to say, if we want to produce something similar to this again, this is generally what we need to do. And I've been told several times, back off, it's a dark art.
Listen,
don't go there.
I'm on the blending team. I'm not accepting that. You need a human nose.
You need a human nose. I agree. Okay, good. And the last thing then from my perspective is, distilleries going on this journey, have you any advice for them or any experiences of learning that you would offer as advice? The old data and how you digitize it, or is there anything that you'd point to say, look, if you're going to consider going on this journey, watch out for these things?
I have one thing to say, and I'm sure Scott will add to it. But we have spoken to a few other distilleries about that the journey we're on, or this product, and the thing that really perks everybody up a bit is the fact that we can save time by collecting data and putting it in a reporting format of your choice. And any webinars, any meetings that you go to, data is king. I mean, cask is king, clearly. But data is so important. There's only one way to learn from mistakes and learn how to get better, or even to see that you have become better, because how are you going to compare yourself? So data is so important, and this tool helps with that. And I think you've managed to even save us money in the first year by realising how much yeast you could reduce.
I've saved us about $8,000 a year. I don't know who that's going.
How are we distributing that?
Don't worry, I'll spend it. No problem. I'm hoping it's going to pay for a wee heat exchanger or something like that. I think the best thing to do with a project like this is not to look quite so much in the benefits now.
Okay.
But it's the benefits, because of the nature of the industry, it's the benefits in 10 years' time and in 15 years' time.
Got it.
So you can say, you're collecting all these data points. What are you going to do with it now? Well, we're not going to do anything with it now, but in 10, 15 years' time, this stuff's going to be invaluable. And Jenny was talking about the storybooks that we've got just now, where Jenny takes the information in the storybooks that I'm providing to Gonzalo. That took me weeks, literally weeks, to go through bits of paper to put it on a spreadsheet to make it available. Because the rest of the time, I think you were just going through big books, big ledgers.
That was painful.
Binders and binders and binders of paper. So over a bit of a shutdown at the distillery, I was like, right, let's see how much we can get this done. So we've done 2014, 15, 16, 17. We're now going to get on to 18.
Amazing.
But because we've started using the production tool, I know that there's a point where I need to get to where I don't have to do this anymore. So it's almost like I'm trying to do the spreadsheets to keep up with the releases. Like, are you going to release anything from 2018 this year? Yeah. Oh God. Okay. So just trying to keep ahead of the release. But I know that once we get to 22, 23, then don't have to do that anymore.
Exactly.
And it's just been forward thinking and thinking, okay, it might not be that much benefit now, but it's going to be a massive benefit in the future.
So focus on the stuff that's right for you, because every distillery is different, right? Every organisation is different, and just think about the future when you're implementing technical solutions today.
And so you're talking about AI. Who knows what AI would be able to do with these data points in the future?
Scary.
Hopefully not replace me.
Irreplaceable.
Or the blenders.
Or the blenders. So final thoughts then for the future. Have you got any immediate objectives? And it doesn't have to be tech related. It could be just another objective ticked off on the sustainability front, or a special release that's coming up, or a big event. Is there anything coming up in the future for you guys that's important?
Definitely on the sustainability side of things.
On the sustainability,
we need an all-encompassing way to show what our carbon footprint is, what our energy consumption is, and where that energy consumption is coming from.
Superb.
So we've got the solar panels that went in this year, 138 of them, 50 kilowatts, but we need to be able to analyse that in relation to how much power we're using in total. The same with the biomass boiler. So we roughly know how many kilowatt hours per litre of alcohol we're using at the moment, because we can look through historical data, we can see what we're doing just now. But what happens if we want to change something on that biomass boiler? So say we want to add in a heat exchanger that can run off of excess from the solar panels to say heat our header tank up from 75 to 95. What's going to be the end solution to that, end result of that? By how many percentage is our boiler going to become more efficient? How many tons of wood chip is that going to save us?
See, this is all the granularity that you can get to, right?
And then that way you can turn around and say, well, how much is this heat exchanger? Oh my God, just go and get it.
Right, exactly.
Just go get it if we know it's going to do this.
Justification, right? Justification of expenditure.
Yep.
Brilliant. Okay, good stuff. Gonzalo, is there anything else to add before we bid you farewell from Buenos Aires?
No. I didn't mean to scare anyone. The tools and tech are here to improve and make us better, and not to replace that. The AI doesn't have a nose, so it's very important. A nose and a mouth. So yeah. That was the only thing to add before leaving.
It's amazing. Great. All right. Well, sincere thanks to everyone for joining us. Thank you very much for coming into the studio. It's always better when we have folk in the studio versus remotely. And Gonzalo, I meant you when I was talking about that. But thank you so much for joining us all the way from Argentina. Anyone wants to know any more information about what we're doing with Ardnamurchan, feel free to reach out to the guys directly, or if you want any more information about the technology, Gonzalo and I are at hand to answer. Thank you very much for joining us. Hope you've learned something, and speak soon.